What's going on, everybody? This is or living in Arizona now. Sorry about that. Um, so we're going to do a live stream here and give you guys an update on a poll that we ran about the things that concern Arizona residents the most. Everything from water to overpopulation. Those were like the two big things that came up on the list. Then extreme heat, the rising temperatures, and then crime and safety were the big ones. Just off the top, water shortage was the number one reason, but people gave a lot of other reasons outside of what our poll said. And we're going to talk about that, also giving some insight into what you should know about the water shortage here in 2024, being that there's been a lot of rain. Let me just clean the lens here real quick, see if that works a little bit better, but it didn't. So, anyway, I'm here in Bali, and I've been here in Bali for about a week now. Thanks to everyone who's hitting the like button as we get this out to the audience. What time is it where you guys are? It's currently 9:19. I know it's kind of early there. I think it's around 6 in the morning where you guys are at, but I apologize if it's too early for you. I asked about 18 hours ago if you guys wanted me to do a live stream, and you said yes, do it. At least 75% of you said to do it. 10% said no, don't do it. I don't know why 10% would say don't do it unless they were being cheeky. And then like the other rest said they don't know. They don't have any idea. So it's 9:19 for Nick. Where are you, Nick? Okay, so those of you who are tuning in from the East Coast, it's early morning. You guys are wide awake then. For those of you in Arizona, which most of our audience is actually in Arizona, I think it's 6:19, 6:20 or something like that. So let's go ahead and get into this and talk about the most important things. The other thing that I talked about was in that poll or in the recent community tab was the current situation of the housing market. My brother's a real estate agent. I talked to some other real estate agents. I've got some interesting feedback, but we're kind of waiting on a couple things to happen over the next week or two because some people believe that we could be entering into a recession, which would be really weird timing going into the election cycle. Very rarely do you see a recession going into the next election cycle because that's usually what the people who are holding the office, they run on. They say, hey, I helped improve the economy. That's what they're going to say. But if you take that away from them, I don't really see how they get reelected if we enter into a recession before the election. So we'll see what happens with that. But that's going to impact the housing market because prices could come down, interest rates could go down. And then once that happens, more people will buy. It goes from a seller's market to a buyer's market. And a lot of people are waiting on that. We also have a situation that we're waiting on with the stock market. The stock market has been selling off. Almost all assets have been selling off for about the last 2 weeks. For those of you who track the markets, you would know that we're entering into dangerous territory with the economy. Some of you would say that's great news. Some of you would say it's bad news. Why would someone say it's great news? Well, because some of you are waiting on the sidelines for the crash to buy. Others of you who are heavily invested in the success of the economy wouldn't want it to crash because if it crashed, then you're stuck holding the bag, as they would say. The bag of goodies that doesn't have much value anymore. It's like, we'll see what happens, but Arizona is definitely in an interesting territory. But let's talk about the dangers that have caught people's attention. So if we go back to the poll, the first one that came up aside from the water shortage was cost of owning a home. They said this is a danger of living in Arizona. They're worried that if the price stays high or if it keeps going up at some point in time when the retracement happens, when the market does correct itself, that the housing prices will go down and people will lose a lot of equity and value. And then sometimes it takes 5 to 10 years to recover from that. And, some of you could be in situations where you might have to foreclose or short sell. Those were things that happened in 2008. We haven't really heard those words for a long time, but that was something that happened during the last 2008 major crash. The other one, some people were mentioning the politicians. They were saying there's a lot of corruption inside the U.S. Or inside the Arizona political ranks. That was something that came up actually a lot. I know we try to avoid politics on here, but for the sake of this video, I am sharing that information. People said biggest concern, Maricopa County election officials, Someone else said election officials, corrupt politicians, local government, neither representing or thoughts of being representing the citizens of the state. I mean, I would say this probably came up the most, so I couldn't really ignore it. I mean, it's like, this is who you guys are. This is you guys. When you guys leave comments, you tell me what you think. If you're one of those types of people who watches and don't say anything, then we don't know what you're doing. And I would encourage all of you, no matter what your political affiliation or no matter what your affiliation is, to always be vocal with your opinion so people know. I mean, that's freedom of speech. You have that protected in the Constitution anyway, so why not use it? But yeah, there's local government here again. Someone said the other thing that really they consider to be a danger is people who move from out of state and bring with them the things that they left behind, the reason they left, and they bring those same things with them. And this actually came up probably number 2 to everything else. They just say people from California bringing California with them, people coming from the East Coast bringing the East Coast with them. This is, again, things that people have said. You guys can get mad at me and say, oh, I can't believe you're talking about this, this and that, because some people get offended when they hear that. I mean, it is what it is. Like, if I was to move to Bali and someone said, don't bring America with you, I wouldn't get offended. I would try to understand it. And, I would probably say, yeah, I mean, I'm not going to get away from something and bring something with me. I mean, the whole idea is to make the place better, but sometimes you don't need to do anything but escape where you're coming from, whether it be high prices or whatever it was. Thank you to everybody who's crushing up the likes. We have now 8 likes. Thank you to everyone who's already done that. SMG says stock market was soaring last few years. Yeah, it was going up. Well, for the NASDAQ, but yes, I mean, the tech companies have been doing great. Nvidia has been doing great. Saudi Aramco has been doing great. Apple's been doing good. Meta has been doing great. Google's done all right. Amazon's done all right. But outside of that, has the stock market really been good for Main Street? I mean, it's good. It's good for Wall Street. It's good for tech companies, but it hasn't really been good for Main Street. And so that's something you have to take into consideration, unless, of course, you're a champion for the big guys and not a champion for the little guys. SMG. Most of the left-leaning people I know in Arizona are natives. Is that true? I don't know. Is that true, guys? You guys can comment. SMG has stated that comment. So you guys can respond to that in the comments to see if he's correct or not. SMG says, my portfolio gains across the board are kicking butt. All right. Sounds like you're voting for the same administration. I understand that. All right. So you're pretty happy and content with what you've gotten from that. What stocks do you own that are really soaring? I have Meta in one of my accounts, but then again, where I bought Meta and where Meta went high and then it came back down and then it went back up again. So it's it kind of recovered and it's gone a little bit, maybe 10 to 15% above its previous all-time high. But we'll see. But yeah, the stock market is looking like it's been in a red sea for about 2 weeks now. So we'll see what happens. As far as the housing market goes, it's in Arizona, it's managed to stabilize. It had reached its peak in 2022, and now it's kind of come down a bit since then. And since then, it's kind of, so it peaked, came down, and now it's just running sideways, stabilized. So we'll see what happens moving forward. Yep, we got 16 new likes. The economy is getting ready to crash, says Middle of Nowhere. I mean, these are all things that we could speculate on, but that was something that caught people's attention really in particular. The next thing is, this is why you they're talking about HOAs. So they're saying HOAs, that's not really a danger though. So we're not going to really harp on that. But some people have talked about being a border state right there on the border, the Mexico border. And remember, a lot of the people who are coming across the border are not from Mexico at this point. It used to be, people would say that people from Mexico are coming. Of course, still some Mexicans are coming across the border illegally. But really what we have is we have people from distant lands crossing our borders illegally. Now, there's an interesting caveat to this. There's high-ranking officials in our government who believe that immigrants add value to the economy. And most people who get to know these immigrants or whatever, they would say that these are actually really good people. These are people that, yes, they're in desperate times and they're in desperate situations, but when they come to the country, they're pretty much going to outwork and out hustle the majority of the local citizens. And this is a view that they hold. Okay. Now I'm just getting this information by watching, documentaries and watching CNN and all this. So not necessarily CNN, but documentaries like that, right? Al Jazeera or whoever makes them, where they're interviewing politicians who say that when an immigrant comes here, they just bring a whole new breath of fresh air and energy to the workforce that may be stagnant. And it's not necessarily to the high end of the workforce. It's usually to like the farm, agriculture, mining, construction, hospitality industry. That's where you really get some benefits. So when I heard them talking like that, I was like, maybe they purposely left the back door open like this so that people could get in without any real barrier to entry. Because if you apply the legal way, I mean, it's going to take you. I mean, here in Bali, here in Philippines, here in Singapore, I talk to people all the time about them trying to apply legally, and they're like, it's next to impossible. And they try. I mean, they'll wait 8 months, and then they'll get the letter that says you've been denied. So the people that are trying to do everything legally, we're not even really opening the door to them. The people that are coming across the border are the ones who are just taking the initiative. They're flying to Peru, they're flying to Ecuador, or whatever countries they're flying into, Venezuela, and then they're just transiting up in a caravan through Costa Rica, Panama, etc., Nicaragua, into Mexico, getting there at the border. And so they're just getting in, and then it's called catch and release. So they catch them and they release them back in the country. They don't send them back to Mexico or send them back to their home country, China, India, wherever they're coming from. They just release them back into the U.S. I mean, if they really had a problem with illegal immigration, I don't think they would catch and release back into the country. They basically catch them. They run some like scans on them, like, fingerprints, and try to get some identification form so they know who's who. But that's basically what they've been doing. So it is what it is. I mean, we'll see how this all shakes down over time, but it's happening, and people in Arizona consider this to be one of the biggest challenges. Investment dinners are popular, selling stable investment options, but don't disclose their vendors. Okay. SMG says, of course they are important. Most non-immigrant people I know would never do the jobs immigrants do for the pay they get. Yeah, I mean, you can, yeah. I don't know anyone who's a non-immigrant who's willing to be a maid at Courtyard Marriott in Philadelphia, or be a dishwasher at Ruby Tuesdays, or I don't. I don't even know any teenagers who are willing to do that job. That was the job that I did. I mean, actually, I was a busboy, a food expediter. I made pizzas, which also included doing the dishes at the end of the night. But I don't know how many youth are actually willing to do that job. So, but when you go into the kitchen nowadays, you would see that people typically, if you were to ask them for their green card or documentation of residency or legality, they wouldn't be able to provide that. So, people have to be more realistic about what it is. And, I think our government probably knows a lot more about it than they let us know. I mean, they don't just let people into the country unless they have like a motive. Because, I mean, if you look at it, I was watching this one documentary, and this was by Australia. It was an Australian media publication, like Australian News Network or whatever. They said that they went down to like some of the what do they call them, swing states, or states that are up for like opportunity, could go either way. So one of them was Arizona, and they went down to the Arizona border, and they were talking to some of the locals, and they said, well, the border was actually getting secured. Trump was building this big wall, and they went there. But I guess the day that Joe Biden got in office, they stopped it that day. It was an executive order. And so they just stopped it. And in that little area where the wall stops, there's like a big hole in the border, and it's on this guy's ranch. I don't remember the guy's name, but you guys can watch the show. But he's given a few interviews. He talks about how him and his like vigilante, like regulated militia are down there with guns and everything. He said at some points in time, 500 immigrants cross that little section of the border every day. He said there's two types of immigrants that come across. One, the drug runners. The drug runners, they're like maybe 5% of the people, if that. What they do is they just run straight into the country. They don't do anything. They just straight into the desert across the border, and they just run with all the whatever they're carrying. But the majority of them, they actually cross the border, and then they walk down the road and they wait for Border Patrol to pick them up. And then when Border Patrol picks them up, they run some processing with them. The fingerprints, the eye scan, the biometrics, whatever they're doing, and then they just release them. But most of them, once they cross the border, they want to get picked up by Border Patrol instead of having to go through the Arizona desert where, you got rattlesnakes, you got heat, you got in the wintertime, very cold down there. I mean, down there on the border at night, it can get below 32 degrees in January and February. So, I mean, these are things you guys got to be like dialed into the reality of the situation, So Anna says she's hoping to retire in Sun City. Potato Head says crimes have spiked up since. Yeah, I mean, wherever you're at, I don't know where you're at in Arizona. You could be in Glendale, you could be in Gilbert, you could be in Tucson, you could be in Yuma. Do you feel like the crime's gone up in your area? When I was in Mesa, there was an app. It was like a radio scanner, police scanner. I sometimes I wanted to download that app because sometimes I would hear sirens, and usually if you hear just one sirens, okay, not a big deal. But when you hear like sirens, horns, another sirens and horns all going in the same direction, you're kind of like, whoa, what's going on? And you never know. So you can go on to X or Twitter, whatever you call it. You can go on to like Nextdoor app and see if any of the neighbors are talking about some sort of incident, or one of your local Facebook groups, or your local HOA group, and see if anyone's talking about what's going on. But when you hear those sirens, especially something like multiple different ambulances, multiple different police cars, and then you hear the helicopter flying overhead, you're kind of like, okay, what's going on? So that's when that app, the police scanner, I mean, you could just type it into the app store and say police scanner app and it'll come up. But, you want to hear what's going on in the scanner to see like, oh my gosh, what's going on? Is there like a bad guy on the loose, or, is there some sort of like massive catastrophe happening? But would you say crime in your area, wherever you're at, is up or is it down? I would say in Mesa, I didn't have enough time before to say that it was any worse or better. And I don't have the data for the crime statistics right now as far as what it looked like in 2020, 2021, 2022, obviously all the way up into 2024. But you could say, does it feel more safe on the streets? I would say it's always been kind of a little bit dangerous in some parts of Arizona, or some parts of Phoenix in particular, around the airport. That's a shady area, especially north of the airport around Van Buren. You could probably say south of the airport a little bit. But southeast Phoenix, just off of Central, down there by Madison Street Jail, it is what it is. I mean, if you go down there just north of the South Mountain, you'll know what I'm talking about. Some of you have been down there, but then you go around I-17, around like the Avenue side, probably from like Central over to like 57th Avenue, probably from, I don't know, I want to say like Thomas north all the way towards Bell Road or Union Hills, even Beardsley. I would say that it's a shady area all across there. I mean, the drivers are just more sporadic, and crime is definitely higher on the west side than it is on the east side. Someone was trying to say that they don't think crime is as bad on the west side. I'm like, have you been to the east side and compared it to the west side? Because the west side, in my opinion, was more dangerous. I would say the types of crime. Okay, so Truly says, also need to talk about the types of crime. Different types are definitely rising. Okay, so murder, that's a big one, right? is that one up or down? Anyone know the statistic? I don't have that off the top of my head. I should have pulled that information in detail, but it kind of came up in the chat. But you guys are sounding like you're educated on this subject of what crimes are up or down. So is murder up in the Valley or in Arizona since say 2018, before COVID? Would you say that? Is petty crime, petty theft, robbery, armed robbery, assaults, any sort of assault, is that up? Those are things that we can guess and speculate on. I mean, there's two ways to look at it. There's hard statistics, which paint a picture, and then there's how you feel in your community, how your safety is where you are right now. Do you feel safe where you're living? Like, do you leave your door open? Would you leave your door open, or would you leave your car unlocked, or do you set your alarm on your car, or to what extent do you concern yourself? I mean, when I was living in Mesa, I was living in one of those gated communities, I guess you could say. It's kind of like a townhouse community. And I had a Ring doorbell. And my first 6 months of living there, I would, every night I would say almost every day, I would check the nightly motion detection. I just wanted to see if there was any people walking outside my door late at night. And I got to be honest, I don't think one time I saw that, at least, but it was a gated community. So I never really saw any suspicious characters kind of walking around my front door. But that would be a good litmus test, in my opinion, to see what's out there. Does your motion detector go off? I mean, you don't even have to do it every day. You could probably do it at the end of every month and just see if there was any motion throughout the night at 1 a.m., 2 a.m., around your cars, around your front door, stuff like that. Those are the things that I look for. I would get white orbs, white orbs. I'd be like, someone would say, that's a ghost. I'm like, I'm not going to get so far into that, but I would see a white orb that would trigger my motion detection. And then sometimes I'd see a cat or, mostly it was a cat, but never really any suspicious people. And I did that in Santan Valley and I did that in Mesa, and I didn't see anything out of the ordinary. But you guys would have to say what you think. Potato Head sounds like where are you living, Potato Head? Because you seem like you're in some sort of war zone wherever you're at with these comments. He's like, yes, you have to watch your back. Heck no, watch your back, protect yourself at all times. Sounds like sounds like when you're in the military, they'd be like, protect yourself at all times, put your head on a swivel. Kim says Fountain Hills is safe. Yeah, I'd say Fountain Hills is safe. A lot of places in the northeast side of Phoenix are safe. Let's see here. Middle of Nowhere says the 17 and 51, both sides don't stop for gas. I would say after 6 p.m., 7 p.m., you might not want to stop for gas. I would stop for gas at around 2 p.m. I would say anywhere in Phoenix would be, Van Buren area, I would prefer not to stop for gas. South Phoenix, Baseline and 7th Ave, I would prefer not to stop for gas if I could avoid it. You live on the west side of Phoenix, 83rd Avenue and Camelback. That's funny because I used to work on 83rd Avenue in Bell at Danny's Family Car Wash. And yeah, I mean, we would get some of the people working there that were a little bit more rough than the people that we would get working on, say, 3rd Avenue even, or Tierra Buena, But I know what you're talking about. 83rd Avenue and Camelback, further south than Bell. It's got potential to be pretty rough. I mean, Glendale Avenue right there is rough. I always wondered why they put the Cardinal Stadium over there, but cheap land, I guess. Bernard says, I heard the Saudis own the water rights for alfalfa fields. Well, here's the thing about that. Saudi Arabia I think the Saudi Arabian royal family is the richest family in the world at this point. Their bank account basically just goes like this around the clock. Saudi Aramco, I mean, it was one of the wealthiest companies in the world, but the Saudis, I mean, they're getting to a point where they have so much wealth, they can basically move in to any arena they want, anywhere they need to. And the fact that the U.S. economy was so strong, and now the power and the weight of the U.S. economy is is shifting to other powers, whether it be China, India, Saudi Arabia, it's going to impact your kids at some point, because at some point in time, it's going to come down to the wire where they're going to say, what does America produce? And you're going to sit there and you're going to say, okay, well, we produce tech. We produce Meta, Apple, Google, semiconductors. But then they're going to say, yeah, but what do you really produce? Raw minerals, all this stuff. And the leadership in the country, I don't know if they either know what they're doing exactly, or they don't know what they're doing, and that'd be even worse. I always cling on to this idea that they know exactly what they're doing, so we don't really need to worry. But if we really look at the leadership, it's kind of questionable. You're kind of like, why are they letting these other countries get so rich off of our backs, or what's going on? Some people say people are compromised. There's corruption. People say they're selling us down the river for some other reason. I don't know. I mean, you can speculate all that. I mean, you can go online and read, left and right. Thank you to the 37 people who smashed up the likes. If we can get it to 50, I'll keep going. Here we are at 25 minutes in. T Madden says, Chandler, unsafe area, middle of nowhere. I don't know if Chandler is an unsafe area. Who said Chandler was unsafe? That one I would question. Chandler's safe, and I would not say it's unsafe. Maybe there's some pockets of Chandler that are unsafe, but if you compare that to most dangerous places, I'll take Chandler 10 times out of 10. Hey, what's going on, Rob52? Truly says, violent crime hit a peak in 2016 and then started declining, but started on an upward peak at the end of 2019 per the Phoenix Law Enforcement Association. Okay. I mean, there's, what could have caused if you look at those timelines, who was the leaders federally, who was the president, who was the governor, who was the mayor? I mean, you could get into all that, and that could help you understand some of the policies that may have impacted that. But it's really hard to tell at this point. Jay Hickson says, water is a huge concern in Tucson. The plan is in the works to use recycled sewage water as regular water supply for city residents. Oh, yeah. They're doing that in other countries. I think they do that here in Bali also. I think they do it in Thailand, where I'm pretty sure they recycle that water and clean it. And they probably have used these other countries as a testing ground before they moved into other areas. I don't know. Will says, hey, just checking out your channel. I'm from New Jersey, thinking of moving to Arizona or Texas. Arizona has a serious drug issue that needs to be addressed. Oh, it does. Anyone who says that it doesn't is in absolute denial. Some of the reasons why Arizona has a problem with drugs, I've speculated this. I think it's people don't have anything better to do than party. And, they don't, it's a desert. It's a desert. It's a barren wasteland. In the summertime, people sleep throughout the day. They stay indoors, and then at nighttime they got, they want to go out and party and have fun. And so, it starts out where they're alcoholics, and then it moves into the white powders, and then it moves into the yellow powders, and then it moves into the pills, and then, whereas other places don't necessarily have that problem. But yes, it is a big problem. It's probably Phoenix, Tucson. You could speculate why you think Arizona has such a problem with drugs. Obviously, I just speculated. That would be one of my reasons, is just because it's a desert, lack of things to do. Idle hands are the devil's workshop. So if people don't got anything to do, they're going to get into things that they probably shouldn't be doing. So that's why it's really important to create jobs. If they're the president or the leaders who talk about creating jobs and sustainable jobs and jobs that work for the people, but also work for the empire, because jobs originally were to build the empire. It's like the Empire Strikes Back, right? Like, so, the American empire needs workers to produce, but now they're like offshoring everything, and they found ways to like find these loopholes around unions and all these things. So they go to China and they pay less money, even when you factor in shipping costs. It's still more affordable and economically feasible for them to offshore your factory, whether it be automobiles or whatever, and then ship all of that across the Pacific or the Atlantic, wherever the supplies are being coming from, pay the tariffs, and they're still beating the price that the American factory could have produced. And I think one of the things that really put America out of reach for a lot of that was the legal system, the lawsuits. So these companies don't have to encounter these activist groups and stuff that really are fighting for the worker, but at the same time, it's a double-edged sword because through that, the compensation, workman's comp, insurance, all these different things, you start adding up all of that. That's why they can go offshore with it and still afford to save and still save money by going overseas. They save headache, save money, all that stuff. How's America going to compete with all that red tape that we've created for ourselves? So until the day comes where we kind of rip up and shred the red tape documents, big government, if you want to call it that, until that day comes, I don't really see how we get out of this hole. SMG says, why the little no monsoon activity? I mean, some years in Arizona, you're going to see a lot of monsoon, but then again, August, September is typically, I would be more concerned if you go to September 15th and you say the monsoon was El No-Show. But typically, if it's an El No-Show, they call it La Nina. So you have like El Nino effect, and then you have a La Nina effect. And I'm not like a meteorologist or anything, but typically when you look at the climate, it's usually impacted by whether or not it's a La Nina or an El Nino. The Farmer's Almanac probably would have predicted it a lot better than I can say. And I don't really track it. It depends on if I'm going to spend time there. If I'm going to spend time in Arizona, I'll go into the Farmer's Almanac and see if it's a La Nina or El Nino prediction. Let's see if it's a La Nina. I want to say it's a La Nina. It seemed like when I was in South America, they were talking about a La Nina, but weather event. So basically, if you don't know what a La Nina or El Nino is, El Nino has a strong effect on marine life during normal weather conditions. Upwellings brings water from the depths of the surface. This water is cold and nutrient rich. During El Nino, upswelling weakens or stops altogether without the nutrients of the depths. I think so. If it's bringing up cold water, then it's going to impact the moisture that's coming up. So I think warmer water creates more moisture. But I don't know for a fact. I'm trying to read it on this website here on NOAA, but I'm going off the cuff. But basically, it has something to do with the trade winds off the Pacific that would impact that kind of weather. But August is usually the strongest because we can go all the way into, we could have a very light July monsoon and then all of a sudden get hit with a pretty heavy monsoon in August. And then there could be a couple of hurricanes that are brewing off the coast of, like, say, Acapulco, or even all the way down towards, I don't know, as far south as Guatemala, Costa Rica or something. And those will go up towards the Baja, and then they'll cut through the Sea of Cortez, and then they'll come into sometimes they'll go towards California. Remember, California almost got hit with like a tropical storm in San Diego in September. But some of the remnants of a tropical storm or a Category 1 hurricane, if it should ever be a Category 1 to hit California, that would be a surprise that far north. But if it did, Arizona is going to get similar to what they're going to get in Florida with that Hurricane Debbie that's about to hit. What is that? The Panhandle of Florida. So that happens in September, though. I wouldn't necessarily call that a monsoon, although it is kind of correlated to the monsoon season. Thank you to the 57 people who crashed up the likes. So we went over 50. Thank you for that, everybody, for getting us over the likes. Evil S says, love Arizona. I can't wait to go back. Visited the state last year and fell in love with it. I'm a huge fan of yours. Thanks for your amazing videos. Greetings from Vieques, Puerto Rico. Well, that's an island. That's one of the Spanish Virgin Islands, right? I actually haven't been over to Vieques. I went as far east. I went far east this last time. I was going to go towards, what's that rainforest? There's a big rainforest right there It's the biggest rainforest in the United States territories. Um, Tunke rainforest. But I didn't make it all the way over to the Spanish Virgin Islands. Instead, I went to San Juan and flew over to USVI. But I looked down and there was Calibra and Vieques. And I was like, man, one of these days I'm going to get over there because I could see the water and the beaches were beautiful. SMG says, super best place to live in Phoenix are Arcadia, North Phoenix, Scottsdale, Gilbert in terms of jobs, amenities, and quality of life. Yeah, I mean, you could probably add Peoria into that list if you wanted to go into the west side. I mean, Cave Creek, but North Phoenix. Yeah, North Phoenix. I mean, north of the 101, if you want to call that North Phoenix. Sure. But then again, it's really expensive there. And I don't think the quality of life is really there. I lived in Desert Ridge for a while and I was not as impressed as I thought I would be. As far as Arcadia, I think it's okay, but I would probably take Chandler or Ahwatukee just because of the location. I'm a big Diamondbacks fan. I don't know if you guys are following the Diamondbacks this year. We're basically got like an 8 out of 10 streak. You know, we're heating up at the right time as we're getting closer to October. You know, we've loaded up on some big hitters. But if I'm going to live in Chandler and Ahwatukee, I'm thinking, okay, I can easily get to a Diamondbacks game, and I can easily get to a Suns game. Used to be I could get to a hockey game. Cardinals are way out on the west side, which is such a bummer. But you know, move those guys back to the center of the city. I would love to see that, but I would say there's still another 10 years left in the State Farm Stadium. But yeah, I mean, for me, being close to downtown for those reasons, for the concerts, for the Diamondbacks, for the Suns, because I like to go to the playoffs. I mean, if you guys get a chance, go to the playoffs when the Diamondbacks, hopefully we make the playoffs. I'm pretty sure we're going to because we're heating up at the right time here. But I'm pretty sure we'll make it. Anyways, Chris says, I love your videos. Great info always coming from Brooklyn, New York. Welcome, Brooklyn. Potato has, now they will start building apartments in Wickenburg. Yeah, I mean, Wickenburg and everything in between. I think someone said that is it Wickiup? One of those towns in between there, I guess people claim is a little bit haunted. We'll see. You know, there's a couple different superstitions that come up. For example, one of the things they say about Cave Creek is it's kind of haunted. And they say the reason that Cave Creek is haunted is because of what the cavalry did to the Apache Indians. They massacred the Apaches right there along the creek a couple times. I don't remember the guys. I think it was Fort McDowell, for those of you who know Fort McDowell. So Fort McDowell, the cavalry would march right through Cave Creek, and then they would march up to Fort Whipple. And so my dad was telling me all about this because you know, he's big on Arizona history. Like, he knows all this stuff that I don't even know because he's older than me, and he's, you know, he was clued into it a long time ago. So I pick up on things from him. But yeah, so they were massacring Apaches back in like the early 1900s, and people say that's why places like Cave Creek are haunted. You could say the same thing about a place like Wickiup or maybe Wickenburg area. And basically what they're referring to is what would be phrased or termed Apache strongholds. So if you guys ever go out to what's considered Arizona's best resort, you know, Arizona's best resort. Oh my gosh, my friend's the superintendent over there. I can't even remember the name of it. What's the best resort? Not Cahava Springs, Castle Hot Springs. Castle Hot Springs, yeah. Anyway, Castle Hot Springs was it's a geothermal area, but that was actually one of the Apache strongholds. It's just past Lake Pleasant up there. For those of you who know what I'm talking about Castle Hot Springs, just type it in. I mean, Castle Hot Springs is one of those places influencers come from like all over the world. They fly their drone and they make a video about Castle Hot Springs, and it gets like 100 million views on Instagram. No, maybe like, I don't know. I saw one about Castle Hot Springs that went across the world. Like they were highlighting Castle Hot Springs, but it's like one of those places that's very famous. It's kind of like what we have in Havasupai. Havasupai Falls down in the Grand Canyon is like another one of those places. Havasupai Creek, it's just like a magical place. Arizona's got a few of those. Horseshoe Bend, Antelope Canyon, Havasupai, which we just talked about. But Castle Hot Springs makes worldwide news for how cool it is. Also, the Wave Cave up in northwestern Arizona. You guys saw our most recent video. I think we did 88 things to do in Arizona. If you haven't already seen that, you should definitely check that out. That's a stellar video. Let's see, what time is it where you guys are? Right now, it is 9:58 p.m. here in Bali, Indonesia. I've been making a lot of videos about Bali. Bali is probably one of the most, if you make a video about Bali, you're going to get a lot of views typically. It's like one of those places. There's a few places in the world: Dubai, Bali, Phuket, Bangkok, Tokyo, New York City. You make a video about them, you know. So I got to come here for work reasons for my travel channel, because it's very popular. Anyway, someone says, "Oh man, looks like there's some interesting conversations going on." My dog and I, which is a Great Pyrenees, hitchhiked to Sedona twice. Williams, Drake, Seligman 3 times to go to the snow cone for a hamburger and a great time with the family. What year was this? It reminds me of a story my dad told me, because, you know, he grew up in Cave Creek back in the 70s and 80s. And I guess he told me he rode his bike from, he rode his bike and hitchhiked from Cave Creek to Prescott up I-17 when he was like 10 years old with his buddy George. You guys know that place? You guys all know Doc Cavalier and Rieta Pass up in Scottsdale. It used to be Rieta Pass, used to be a restaurant and steak. That's my dad's best friend. From elementary school is George Cavalier, which is Doc Cavalier's son. If you go out to North Scottsdale, you see Doc Cavalier's park. Well, my dad's really good friends with his son. They just recently went to Machu Picchu. I took my dad to Machu Picchu in February, and then he went back and he told George and his wife, and then my dad went back down there with George and his wife to Machu Picchu. But yeah, he was telling me the story about how those guys, they've always been doing adventure stuff, but they rode their bike from Cave Creek to Prescott. And I was like, when I was a kid, I don't think I would have thought about going. I remember I thought it was a big trek to go from like Cave Creek to like New River on a bike as a kid. So when he told me he went up to Prescott as a kid, like I was like, what? On a bike? Oh man. If you know, you know. Sangis says, love it here in Arizona. Let's see here. Okay, Charlie says, I moved from Chicago to Bullhead City about 2 years ago. That's an interesting transition to go there. It's supposed to be 117 today, and I still love it. The biggest challenge was adjusting from a metropolis to a small town. Yeah, I think it's really cool to live along the river out there, and whether it's Lake Havasu City or Bullhead City, I think that's a really cool idea. So right now it's 42 minutes in. It's 10 p.m. here. I can keep going. We got 77 likes. If you guys can get me over 100 likes, I'll keep going. And that's because it'll keep the algorithm tuned up. So you guys can help with that, and we'll keep having this conversation for everyone to chime in and share their thoughts about what's going on. Hello from Turkey and Izmir City. How are you? We got some people from Turkey in here. I've been to Turkey. I've been to Antalya. I've been to Istanbul, and I've been to Fethiye. I wanted to go to Ephesus. Ephesus was a place I was trying to go to. And I wanted to go to Cappadocia, but I didn't make it to Cappadocia. So I basically need to go back to Turkey. You know, Turkey's interesting because they have like the Turkish Riviera in the south, which is absolutely beautiful. And then in the north, they have the Black Sea coastline, which I didn't even explore any of the Black Sea coastline. I still need to go around the whole Black Sea region. You know, that's where Crimea is with Russia, but I would go to Bulgaria or maybe northern Turkey. Truly says Istanbul and Bodrum, Turkey, awesome places and wonderful people. Yeah, I mean, that I wanted to go all the way to the far west of Turkey, which is kind of along the border with Iraq, which would be interesting for me just to be back over there in that region. I never actually went in country in Iraq, but the closest I've ever been to Iraq was Kuwait, which was recently. I have noticed that on any given day, Tucson is 6 to 8 degrees. I'm assuming you're saying 6 to 8 degrees cooler than Phoenix. And yes, that would be true. Hey, Princess Michelle. Yes, it is early in Arizona. I apologize to everyone. I think it's 7 in the morning in Arizona. It's 10 o'clock p.m. here. I was like, if I wait a little bit longer, I might not have the energy and the stamina to do a long one and have a good hangout. So that's why I was doing that. Truly says, I worked in Riyadh for 3 years, felt just like living in Yuma. Yeah, Riyadh has probably changed a lot. I don't know what year you were in Riyadh, and I've never been to Saudi Arabia, so I don't know, but I've been to, Qatar, and I've been to UAE. But Riyadh, oh my gosh, I can only imagine how hot it is. Yeah, no, I got you, Tracy. It is, Tucson is 6 to 8 degrees cooler typically than Phoenix year round, I would say. And that's just because it's a higher elevation. So higher elevations impact a lot of things. For example, I think they said it's going to be 117 in Phoenix today, and it's going to be what in Tucson? 110, 107 to 110. So that would be my guess, just going off the hip there. 10 Toes Down says Riyadh is taking over the sports world. Yeah, they are. I mean, they can literally go to Ronaldo, they can go to Messi, they can go to any of the superstars. Right now, a lot of what's happening is Africa is basically pumping out a ton of like soccer athletes, and then they're like going to like France, and they're going to like UK. So like UK and France have a bunch of like African superstar soccer players, and they play for like, Manchester United and Chelsea and all these different things, and then the national team. But what's going to happen is Saudis are just going to say, hey, come play for us. And then you're going to see places like Manchester United and all these other places kind of fizzle out, because Saudi's just going to buy up all the talent. And, Ronaldo and Messi are done basically. But they're going to do the same thing with basketball. I think they're even doing it with golf. They have a new golf that challenges the PGA. So we'll see what all happens. SMG says, leaving the heat today and heading up to the woods, Canyon Lake. Thanks, Jeff. See you on the next one, bro. I see you, man. Canyon Lake. You're heading to the woods at Canyon Lake. That's going to be hot, dude. You mean Canyon, you're going up towards the Mogollon Rim, maybe. Canyon Lake, not the one above Saguaro. I don't think you meant that one, because I know that's going to be hot today. 10 Toes Down says, yeah, this is very true. They're taking over combat sports. Yeah, Tyson Fury fought Usyk. Didn't Tyson Fury fight Usyk in Saudi Arabia? I mean, John Fury. Well, since you're MMA guy, you probably also know about John Fury and Tyson Fury and Usyk and, Nagano and Anthony Joshua. I mean, they all fight down in Saudi Arabia now. And it's a big thing. I mean, Tyson Fury, when he sees the Saudi crown prince, he's like in a mirror. Whenever he sees in a mirror, he's like, yes, sir. He's like, yes, sir. Because money talks. I mean, the weight they pull. If you ever come across an Emirati, like an emir or a sultan, or like, a sheik, I mean, they command respect when they walk in a room. I mean, you don't really see that with Western leaders too much, where when they walk in a room, I mean, the energy just shifts towards the emir, and there's a lot of them. And I've seen this in Abu Dhabi and Dubai, and they pull a lot of weight. Yeah, they pay crazy money. I mean, they have so much money. It's like Beverly Hillbillies when they would shoot the oil spout, and oil would just come flying out. That's basically how they got the money. They just got money coming out, like they call it FU money. It's so much money that they could just be like, whatever. People literally have that kind of money. American corporations have that money, but I don't think there's too many people that have that kind of money. I guess, Gates or Bezos or Musk, but they don't flagrantly throw around that money. But then again, I would say those families, if you really took all the wealth of the families, because the families are sometimes 75 to 80 like members deep. If you took the wealth of the entire family, it's well over $1 trillion. So it's not like concentrated to just like Gates or Musk. It's a whole family spread out. So they're a lot of money. Supposed to be 110 in Anthem. That's hot. Hopefully Hopefully. What did Barbara say? Thought this was supposed to be about Arizona. It is about Arizona. We're 49 minutes in. Usually we do the first like 20 minutes of the live stream are about the subject, because when someone replays the video, they can see that. But then we just open it up to live open discussion, and everyone just kind of talks about what they want to talk about, whether it's about Arizona or world affairs. So in case you're just wondering, in case you're new here and you're wondering why at the 49-minute mark we're talking about a whole myriad of things, that's why. Brian says, my cabin in Whispering Pines was at 5,100 feet elevation, nice and cool most of the time, and snow in the winter. Yeah, it's Whispering Pines. You're gonna have to tell me where that's at. I'm thinking that's central, north central, somewhere around, maybe around the Mogollon Rim area or nearby Prescott. But you can help me on that. 10 Toes Down says on the rim. Yeah, Whispering Pines. Is it on the rim? Is it on the Mogollon Rim? Yeah, that would be a dream. I mean, to be up there on that would be great. Anyways, you guys want to keep going? We can. We got 101 people watching, 94 people hit the likes. Rob says Pine Top will be 85. Pine Top, see now, Pine Top 85 degrees is money this time of year. I mean, is it 85 in Pine Top? Pine Top Lakeside. I mean, you could probably get even cooler in Greer. And that was the interesting thing. And I've said this a few times on a couple other live streams and videos that we did. Arizona can have the hottest place in the country and the coldest place in the country. So it could be 119 or 120 degrees in Yuma, and then it could be like a low in Greer at, say, like 41 degrees or 39 degrees in the same day. It doesn't happen very often, but it can happen. So Greer being cold, Yuma being hot, it's possible. Obviously, Death Valley's been breaking some records lately. It's very hot over there. That would be closer to what is that? That'd be closer to like Bullhead City. I mean, if you're in Bullhead City and Death Valley's breaking records, you're probably getting in your car and you're like, oh boy, you got to really build yourself up to get into a car, to touch the steering wheel, touch the seats. Hopefully you have your car in the garage, or if it's not in the garage, hopefully you've got one of those solar windscreens protecting it, all that. I mean, it's quite hot. Truly says, my mom used to switch up living in Yuma during the winter and Pine Top during the summer. That's nice. Yeah, I mean, nowadays it seems like having one of those RVs or those motor homes is a nice way to go, for those of you who don't mind driving a big vehicle. But if you do mind driving a big vehicle, I think one of those Mercedes vans could be good enough. I mean, those Mercedes vans are quite nice, and they don't take up as much width on the freeway as the others. So 10 Toes Down, do you plan on staying overseas until it cools down in Arizona? Yeah, I mean, I would say about 2 years ago, I had said, because I was spending time in the summer in Arizona, and I said, I think it's too hot to be in Arizona during the winter. And, I grew up around snowbirds. Most of the time they would go back to Colorado. It seemed like the people that I knew, they would live in Arizona during the winter and Colorado in the summer. And I went up to where they were staying up in Durango. I mean, it's literally right up past Four Corners. You could drive up there in probably 8 hours, 6 to 8 hours, I think is the drive. And that was Durango and Silverton. And it would snow up there in the wintertime, actually, at times. There was still snow on the mountains in Silverton. They actually have a major railroad that goes out there. But I always kind of said to myself, maybe I'll do that. I never really did that, though. I'm doing something a little bit different. Here in Bali, it's not too bad. I mean, it's still hot to go outside in the daytime. The first couple days I was in Bali, it was like misty and not so nice, but now it's been like blue skies, and I like blue skies. Super Hobby says, yep, and it's perfect in Phoenix in the winter. It is perfect in Phoenix in the winter. And I like the occasional rainy day. I mean, I don't like just blue sky, blue sky, blue sky. I mean, I think that's not something that I like. I like rain because I like when the desert gets rain. I like to smell the rain in the desert, creosotes, all that. All right, we got 94 likes. Let's see if we can get it over 100. And if we can, I'll drink some of this Sprite and stay on the line. Oh, Sprite. Obey your thirst. What is your preference for year-round living, northern or southern Arizona? The best place for year-round living? Bisbee. I mean, Bisbee, if you go to Bisbee, they'll tell you, I'm not saying I'd live in Bisbee because it's a little bit too small and it's too far away from a major airport, which I would need. But if you go to Bisbee and you drive down the main road, right there on the sign in Bisbee, it says the world's best weather. It does. I mean, Bisbee claims it's got the best weather in the world. I mean, I would say San Diego's got some pretty good weather. Also, there's some other places I'm sure that have nice weather. But Bisbee, someone who was well traveled said Bisbee had the best weather in the world. So there's something to tell you, and that's southern Arizona. So if you haven't been down to Bisbee, another cool thing about Bisbee is they still get monsoons. Like Phoenix or Tucson might not be getting a lot of monsoon activity, but you go out towards like Tombstone and Bisbee and the outskirts of like outside of the city, and you'll see they get pretty much regular monsoon moisture. Larry says, hot today in Oklahoma. Great channel. Thank you. Truly says, one of my favorite places is Strawberry, Arizona. Strawberry, Arizona is nice. I think they have a problem with water shortage right now. So that caught my attention. I would say build a well. If you go up there, you're going to need access to a well. And they've got plenty of groundwater out there. I just don't know what the water rights situation is. Scott says, my buddy drove to Death Valley when it was 130 just to feel what kind of heat feels like. Yeah. I've always said that the hottest, I remember when I was in the military, I was in Las Vegas at Nellis Air Force Base. It was about July, and it was probably around 4:00 in the afternoon. I was working late shift. So you have day check and night check. I was working night check. We had just come on and we were going to go fetch the birds, as we call them, the jets. And we were at Nellis Air Force Base. And I remember saying to myself, as someone who comes from Phoenix, I feel like Las Vegas right here is the hottest I've ever felt in my life. And that was on the airfield at Nellis Air Force Base. And I bring that up because Death Valley, Mojave Desert is very close to Las Vegas. But I don't think Las Vegas is hotter than Phoenix. But I mean, when you're on an airfield, concrete, airport slab like that, of course it's going to feel hot. But Death Valley, I mean, it'd be interesting to go out onto the airfield, onto the tarmac, and see just how hot it is. Any of you guys who've left out of Sky Harbor recently, probably at some point in time, if you had a delayed flight, Sky Harbor will park you on the tarmac for like an hour or 2 hours sometimes on a Southwest flight or an American Airlines flight. And the engines aren't really turning at high capacity. So it can get real hot on the tarmac in July and August at Sky Harbor Airport. That'd be like a horrible situation. I don't know why the airplanes aren't built with some sort of air conditioning for that, but you get out on that tarmac at 3:00 in the afternoon and you're delayed at Sky Harbor. Oh boy, stand by. That one's going to be brutal. What do I think about Snowflake? So Snowflake is an LDS community. Obviously, it's great if you're LDS. If you're not LDS, you might feel on the outside looking in. I'm not saying that the LDS won't be welcoming or friendly or anything. I'm not saying you'll have any problems with the LDS. I'm just saying that it's an LDS community. So you could get some good land there. I mean, you could go out to St. John's and get even cheaper. But aside from being LDS, why would you want to live in Snowflake? Hot in the summers, cold in the winters, not a lot of vegetation. It's kind of cold. It's far away from everything. I guess you'd want to live there to be far away from everything, right? Is that what it is? Where are the stars? Anybody research the HARP, High Atmospheric Auroral Research Program? Well, as far as the stars go, I actually haven't seen the stars in a while, but I've been in a city. I'll have to look out here in Bali and see if I can see them. Maybe I'll go up to Ubud and see if I can see stars. But now that you mention it, I don't think I've really seen a lot of stars recently. But I haven't been in a place outside of like a city to look up at the heavens, so to speak. Um, and as far as HARP goes, I don't know. I know it's high atmospheric auroral research program, but in Gakona, Alaska, and I think they have one in Puerto Rico, right? But who knows what people are what's going on these days? I'm still trying to figure out if chemtrails or are they contrails. I mean, I still don't know what to make of all that. I used to own the $3.50 car wash at the junction of Hayden and McDowell. It's gone now. Oh, really? Was that a self-serve, do-it-yourself car wash or what? Oh, man. Truly says Sedona is a good place for stars because of their lighting regulations. Yeah, I mean, if you really want to see if there's stars in Arizona or if this comment is true, go up to the north rim of the Grand Canyon or go up on the Mogollon Rim. I mean, after all, up there by Payson, it's called Star Valley for a reason. Or you could go down to southern Arizona to the Chiricahuas down there in Portal, and they got the darkest place on earth where you're supposed to be able to see stars like you haven't been able to see. I mean, if you're not going to see stars in Phoenix. I mean, the old days of actually, I used to see stars in Phoenix. So yeah, you can see stars in Phoenix, especially if you're in like Sun City or if you're in Santan Valley. The people who are living out on the west side or the east side, like not in Chandler, but I'm saying like Santan Valley way or Florence, you guys aren't seeing stars? Is this a thing? How is the immigrant situation affecting Arizona? So the immigrant situation, obviously, it's ongoing. I mean, it's having positive and negative effects. Crime can go up because of it, but also productivity and the economy can benefit from the immigration situation. Like we were talking about earlier in the video when we were highlighting all the things about Arizona that people are concerned about. You know, the immigrants do work that most Americans won't do. I mean, you're not going to see an American non-immigrant working at Courtyard Marriott changing the sheets and doing the maid work, cleaning the bathrooms. You're not going to see an American or doing the dishwasher work majority of the time. You go out to any one of those job sites right now at any one of those new building communities. I mean, mariachi music is playing and they've got the La Cucaracha with the roach coach going around. I mean, it's not going to be a bunch of like American citizens out there building homes. So, it does have an impact on the economy in the sense that productivity can go up because of it, but also crime can go up because of it. And then, so is there anything that's perfect? I mean, there's always an upside and a downside to everything. Nothing's perfect, right? One of the things that my dad, who works in construction, used to complain about is how he couldn't drive up the wages because the illegal immigrants would come across the border and work for so much cheaper that it kept his wages down. So that can have a big impact is wages. Also, for companies, in a way, it's kind of cheaper, more cost efficient, and better for them to hire that kind of labor force because Americans are typically attached to all sorts of red tapes like unions and high insurance and all this stuff. Whereas like illegal immigrants or undocumented immigrants, they kind of don't really complain as much when it comes to all that stuff. So I'm just speculating on why this could be something that the current administration is allowing to continue to go on. Of course, they're going to say, oh, it's a big problem. But at the end of the day, they enabled it and they're allowing it. And they're doing the catch and release program. So that tells you they see some sort of benefit to the undocumented migrants. It might not be good for you, the average laborer or the average wage earner, but it can be good for Wall Street and it can be good for the empire in certain capacities. Who's Jefferson? Princess Michelle says she sees stars in Anthem and New River. Just Me says, I have a house by Casa Grande and I see stars almost every night. Okay, see, so we've got stars. Super Javi says, what do you think about Santa Cruz County to live? Santa Cruz County. I'm not too familiar with Santa Cruz County. There's a few areas in Arizona that I'm not familiar with. Let me see. Let me see if I can get a finger on the pulse here. All right, that's Rio Rico, Tamacari, and Tubac area. I would live there, right there along the. I'm not sure of Nogales. I'm assuming it's part of Nogales, but Mount Wrightson's right there. They've got Patagonia Lake. That area is probably around 4,000 feet elevation. If you go a little bit further east of there, you go into Arizona's southern Arizona's wine country, and rolling green fields even this time of year. At least last time I was down there in the summertime, it was still very green up there at 4,000 feet elevation. You know, you go over a little bit further, you'll go into, well, obviously you got Rio Rico there. So yeah, I would say do it if you can. I mean, it's close enough to Tucson's big airport, or big enough airport to where you can reach a large airport like LAX or DFW within like an hour to an hour and a half. I wouldn't say you could probably take Uber, but you could probably drive to the airport. So yeah, I mean, it's a win-win. I mean, you've got Green Valley, you've got Madera Canyon, all that good stuff right there. Sahuarita. Just Me says Arizona has everything but an ocean and beach. Okay, but we've got lakes. I mean, go out on the Lake Pleasant, go out on the Lake Bartlett Lake, go out on the Canyon Lake, Saguaro Lake. I mean, if you're on the water, the only difference is you're not dealing with sharks. You can still fish and catch fish that you can eat. I mean, you're not going to catch a mahi, but you can swim in that water just like it was the ocean. The only difference is when you take a gulp, you might get a little bit of gasoline in your mouth, and some petrol mixed with some algae and some fresh water instead of salt. But I mean, we've got plenty of lakes. You can go out on any one of those, and I mean, you're not going to get white sand, I guess you could say, but you can swim. And the good thing about a lake or a river, you can swim there without having to worry about a shark. I would say that. Oh man, Super Hobby. I'm not even going to say that, but I got you, man. Or you could just go down to Rocky Point, Mexico. It's about an hour away. Everyone thinks Rocky Point's so dangerous, but just join the Rocky Point group on Facebook, and you'll see there's people out there. They love Rocky Point. Everyone loves Rocky Point. It goes down there. I mean, Rocky Point back in the 90s, when I was going down there for spring break, we would go to Cholla Bay. JJ's Cantina was like one of the spots you would go to out on Cholla Bay. And, you could walk all the way out there and you could you do clamming. And then on the other side, they'd have, I think it was called Las Conchas. And then you would go down to the wharf area. And the wharf area was like really cool. That's where you could get real street tacos. Like, I remember the tacos I was eating in Rocky Point in the 90s. You wouldn't get those in the U.S. When you would get tacos in the U.S. back in the 90s, they were not like those little diced up pork and cubed beef that you would get down there in Mexico. And so that was when I used to get those street tacos. And I always wondered why they don't bring those up to the United States. Now they have them in the U.S., but such good tacos down in Rocky Point. But now it's changed. They built up the whole beach. That used to be where you would camp. You would camp all those hotels along the beach there. That's where you used to camp. You'd have to bring a shovel, you'd dig a hole in the ground, and then you would camp there. Now there's just resort after resort. So same thing that happened in Cabo, same thing that happened in other places. I mean, if anything, it should pique your interest about how beautiful the Sea of Cortez is and the Baja alongside the mainland of Mexico, all the way down to what's that town? Guaymas. I mean, if you guys go down there to Guaymas is more beautiful. Guaymas is more beautiful than Puerto Penasco. If you go past Puerto Penasco and you go towards San Felipe, that's an area you should check out. That's more for like people who live in Calexico or Mexicali. but go down to San Felipe, and if you go even past San Felipe, you could come to Laredo. And Laredo is just like out of this world beautiful. They've got some phenomenal golf courses, great views. You can even fly, I think, from Sky Harbor to Laredo. If you know, it's one of those things. If you know, you know. If you didn't know, now you know. Laredo, Mexico, on the Baja. It's basically in between. It's right there in the middle of the Baja, facing the Sea of Cortez. It's just like Arizona, but with beautiful beaches, amazing golf courses and resorts, and it's on the Sea of Cortez. And there they have a lot of marine life. I think they have like whale sharks. So you could do tours, go out and swim with whale sharks, possibly if it's whale shark season. They got like spotted stingrays. They've got like a lot of hammerheads out there. We got, obviously they do have great whites. So there's no joke. They have great whites, which scares me, but they do have that out there. And then they also have, like, during mating season, they have humpbacks that come down, humpbacks and gray whales. And I think they've even been getting a lot of orcas. Shamu's been going down there. Homeboy Saduka says is between La Paz and San Felipe. Yeah, it is between La Paz and San Felipe. Thereabouts is Laredo, and it's not spelled the same way as Laredo, Texas. It's got a T in the middle. Lareto, Laredo. But I was just down in La Paz. I went to Todos Santos, Los Cabos, Cabo San Lucas. I mean, that's just like Arizona. It's far enough south to where it's like subtropical, but it's got very similar climate to what you would find in the desert, or at least the topography and the geography is very similar. I mean, Lake Pleasant and Laredo terrain look very similar, except the difference is that's Sea of Cortez, and Lake Pleasant is Lake Pleasant, Agua Fria, and Colorado River supply. Someone says, just go to PV, Puerto Vallarta. Yeah, you could just go down to Puerto Vallarta. Again, direct flight from Phoenix to Puerto Vallarta. You could go to Mazatlan. I mean, all those are places that if you live in Arizona, you should probably be exploring. I mean, there's no sense to be bored if you're living in Arizona. There's so much to do. I mean, you just got to be adventurous and outgoing. And I wouldn't drive down there. Like, I'm not saying drive down to Guaymas, although I don't know how else you could get to Guaymas. Does Guaymas have an airport yet? But Guaymas is amazing. Just look up online Guaymas. It looks like gooey moss. That's how you would, if you spelled it, it would look like gooey moss. Yeah, I mean, has anyone driven down to Guaymas? I think it's in what? Not Hermosillo. It's in Sonora. Is it in? It's not in Sonora. I think it's in Sonora. I mean, there's so many places in Mexico in that region that are worth exploring, even like Monterrey. I've never been to Monterrey, but every time I see pictures of Monterrey is quite impressive. Although it kind of reminds me a bit of El Paso. I'm not a big fan of El Paso. There's not much going on there. But Monterrey is not really like El Paso, because Monterrey is like, I think Monterrey is the wealthiest city in Mexico in terms of like per capita income for wage earners. And they have a lot of factories down there like Ford and GM and stuff like that. But we're talking about Mexico because Mexico and Arizona are like, we're connected in some way going way back in time, considering old Mexico and Arizona were all part of the same country. So, I mean, that's why we've got so many names that are in Spanish. Javi says, I've driven to Nogales to PV. I've driven through all that. Yeah, I mean, if you were to go to PV, I've heard my dad did it, and he said he don't know if he'd do it again. I'm not a big fan of driving in Mexico on some of those roads, just because the way people drive, they overtake people. Like they'll pass up a semi and they'll come right at you, and you'll have to be driving like on the shoulder of the road just so you don't get hit by the oncoming traffic. So you got to keep your head on a swivel when you're driving down in Mexico, still to this day. And you definitely want to make sure your car is. You don't want your car to be too nice, Like you don't want to take like a super tricked out ride down there, but you also want to make sure it's a strong vehicle. So like maybe like I don't know, like a 2020 Ford Explorer should be a good vehicle to take to Mexico for that. 17 hours, 85 to 90 miles per hour the whole way. Yeah, I mean it's a long haul. That's a long haul. I would have probably wanted to stop at some of those beaches along the way just to see what's going on in between. I recommend flying to some of these Mexican tourist hubs from Mexicali. Oh, you can fly from Mexicali. I was going to fly. So I've crossed the border. Last time I went to Cabo San Lucas, I flew into Tijuana, and then I did that ex-border cross where you walk across the bridge into California, into Otay. And I think they do that same thing where you can fly into Mexicali and then just walk across the border into Calexico. Yeah? Correct me if I'm wrong. But I did that in Tijuana, and it was good because I don't remember exactly why I did that, and I thought it was good. Oh, I remember it was because during COVID. During COVID, in order to come back into the United States, you had to do like a stick up your nose and all this stuff if you arrived by plane. So you had to have a negative antigen test. But if you arrived in Tijuana and you walked across the border, you didn't have to provide a negative antigen test. So I was like, okay, so all I got to do is just arrive in a Tijuana, which is a nice new airport, and then just cross the border at the border crossing. I mean, you can look this stuff up. It's available to everybody, but I think they do that in Mexico or in Mexicali too. But you know, Mexicali is hot this time of year. I mean, it's going to be like 118, 120 degrees right now. So I mean, pick your poison with that one. Maybe in the wintertime it's good. I mean, Mexicali's grown to over 1 million people. There was a point in time where Mexicali was a small city. It was not very big. And the last like 20 years, like it's become one of Mexico's like largest cities out of nowhere. Oh, is it the hottest place on earth? Yeah. I mean, Mexicali right now, I mean, even down there by the whole area just south of the Salton Sea is just freaking hot. Whew. I mean, just thinking about it, it's crazy. Yuma's hot. 10 Toes Down says, yeah, I can't wait for it to cool down here. I mean, Arizona is going to start cooling down. And for me, I always said Arizona cools down around Halloween. So it's going to be a while. Like Arizona, it seemed like something happens around like Halloween time where it just like all of a sudden gets cold. It's obviously it doesn't work like clockwork. It's not always true, but Halloween time is when it starts to really cool down, when you get some relief. So you still got a little bit of ways to go, guys. August, September, at least are going to be hot. Maybe you'll get some relief in October if the groundhog sees its shadow or something. Or if the chipmunk or the roadrunner sees its shadow. 111 in Phoenix yesterday. That's not too bad, man. Hey, thanks for the super chat, by the way. Just Me says, never bring a nice car to Mexico unless you want to lose it. I've driven some nice cars down to Mexico. It's not always like crazy dangerous, but your risk goes up when you drive a nicer car, or because especially around the border areas. Like when I was down in La Paz and I was talking to some of the gringos that live down there in La Paz or Todos Santos, I was asking them, is it safe? And they're like, oh, I love it down here. They love it down in Mexico. They love it. I mean, these are people, this was a few years ago, at least. Things change over time because as Mexico got more popular, the government started coming down with all these different restrictions and like tax liabilities and stuff. So people always change their tune once the tax conversation comes up. But a few years ago, they absolutely loved living in like La Paz or any of those areas. And I would always ask them if it's safe. And they said, yeah. And, the conversation about crime or danger comes up and they said, well, I'm not trying to drive down from San Diego down here to La Paz, because they all know that around the border, it's a hot zone. It's a hot zone. I mean, the likelihood that something's going to happen is still small, but it's higher than it should be. You get what I'm saying? So, I mean, it's the likelihood that anything bad would happen is still low, but do you really want to roll the dice on that? I mean, I would say you could probably drive from San Diego down to Rosarito or Ensenada, just like you could probably drive from Phoenix down to Rocky Point without an issue. Driving to Guaymas or Guaymas is going to be a little bit more risky. Driving to Mazatlan or like Javi did, go down to Puerto Vallarta in a car, and it doesn't matter if what your ethnicity is. It doesn't. You could be a Mexican American and they'll still come after you. They don't. And in fact, sometimes they go after Mexican Americans more than they would go after gringos or, Americans who are native born or whatever, or of, whatever ancestry, because they think they can get over on Mexicans better. So if you think that they're just targeting you because of this and that, no, actually, it could be worse to be a wealthy Mexican American inside of Mexico than it could be just being like some dude from Boston who moved down to Arizona. So it is what it is down there. It's rough terrain. They'll do it to anybody. That's how the cartels are. It's organized crime. Oh, they say, yeah, we've broken multiple records. Yeah, because, dude, it is freaking Arizona. Arizona is a hot place, but we break records every year. I mean, name a year when we didn't break a record. For those of you who lived back in Arizona back in 1992, I mean, when we broke the all-time record, what was the all-time record for Phoenix? Like 120 degrees a couple times we've gotten close to 118. That's like the most recent, but we haven't gotten back up to 120 degrees in Phoenix for a long time. But that was back in 92 or 93, 120 degrees in Phoenix. Okay. Phoenix in 1995, and then it hit 122 degrees in 1990. So it wasn't 1992, 93. It was 122 degrees in 1990. So when the day comes when we hit that was on June. It seems like June and July are the hottest months. Although it could be argued that August is the hottest months. I would say July. So that is a positive. Arizona's made it out of the woods because August is the hottest month, or is not the hottest month. July is. So you guys have made it through the woods because the monsoon does cool it down a bit. Thank you to the 114 people who smashed up the likes. So is Arizona for you long-term, Jeff? What are your 10 years plans? I don't have enough time to plan for 10 years. What I'm trying to do right now is work, hustle, and try and build wealth, try to be strategic. And then when the time comes, retire from suffering. I will never be able to retire from work, but I retire from suffering in the sense that gain financial, I'm looking to gain financial independence, not being so like worried about money. And that causes a lot of suffering in terms of anxiety, stress, unease, because in the back of your head, you're always like, oh man, if the money stops coming in, if I lose my job, all this stuff, like, am I going to be able to, am I going to be living on the streets or something? That's like the worst case scenario. That like the second I start having that thought, like, oh man, what if the money stops coming in? Where will I live? That's when I jump back into the workforce really hard. So when I can retire from that thought, that'll be a good day. Every state in the South is good to retire at. We'll see. Thank you, Rob. Rob says thumbs up for the channel. I appreciate you, man. Yeah, man, the goal, if we love what we do, can work. Yeah, I mean, you want a labor of love. If you love what you do, and I always, whenever I'm talking to someone who's young or someone who is trying to find their way, because, you talk to people, they're always trying to figure, especially young people, you ask them what they want to do, they say, I don't know. And there's a couple of things that I always repeat time and again to the young people. I always say, well, if you don't know what you want to do, and I got this from someone else, this isn't necessarily my thing. I'm just kind of an aggregate of resources. But I told him, I said, think back to when you were a kid. What were you interested in as a kid? And then that's probably what you're supposed to be. That's your mission in life. for me was travel. Okay. Because I used to look at almanacs, I used to look at atlases, I used to look at globes. I had no idea that I could monetize that, but I did. I also used to have I used to be very addicted to statistics. Like I used to read like the Guinness Book of World Records as a kid, like a 6-year-old kid who was into atlases, almanacs, and Guinness Book of World Records and statistics. I always used to look at the back of a baseball card. I knew what Barry Bonds was batting. I knew what Ken Griffey Jr. was batting. I didn't know that that was going to translate later in life to data science, because that's what that is data science. So what was it that you were into when you were a kid? Was it another thing that I was into when I was a kid was airplanes. I ended up going into aviation in the military. So I always try to tell people, if you're really confused about what it was, go back to when you were 5 years old, 10 years old, whatever it was. What was it that you were interested in your most natural, like instinctual, like innocent way? And try to figure out what that could correlate with moving forward in the workforce. And then I say, okay, so once you've figured that out, then you've got to basically move in that direction and figure out how to start working in that arena. Because like Steve Jobs said, he would always say, like, you've got to find something you're passionate about, because if you're not passionate about it, when the hard times come, you'll want to give up. But if you're passionate about it, you'll be able to battle through the hard times. So it's really important that you find a labor of love. I mean, these are things that if you read the book, Think and Grow Rich, or How to Win Friends and Influence People, I mean, these are old classic books of entrepreneurs that people would tell you to read. But Think and Grow Rich, definitely, they talk about finding the need for the labor of love. You've got to find something that you're passionate about. And they reference this idea that you've got to think it, believe it, and feel it. So if you think it and you do it, but you don't feel your heart's in it, you're never going to be successful with it. It's not going to really lead to a sense of pride, or a sense of accomplishment, or a sense of well-being, because it's not really what you're supposed to be doing. You could do it because, you got to float the boat for a while. You got to put bubble gum on the hole in the raft or whatever to hold it together. But as time goes by, you want to evolve into what you're supposed to be doing. And typically the way they would say that you're on the right path is, if you knock at the door and it opens, that might be an indication that that's the direction you should go. But if you keep trying to knock on a door and it never opens, and it's just like you're bumping heads up against a wall and you're not getting any forward progress, that might be an indication that that's probably a signal to you to go in a different direction. And that's cutting ties with things that are not meant for you, whether it be relationships or whatever. And I mean, we have to remember, all of us go through this, and I have to be reminded of it myself. Like, I never would have thought that I would be working on the internet doing the jobs that I did or do, because when I was a kid, I always thought that I would be working in construction with my dad, or doing something on a golf course or something like that, being a builder. But when the internet came out, I was able to be successful with it. And I tried to get away from it. I tried to get out of the internet online economy and do something with brick and mortar. But that brick and mortar stuff, I was coming up against resistance and I wasn't getting it. But it was like the signals were there, like, keep going with the internet stuff. And it's paid off. I mean, same with the travel. Like I told my friend, he said, why don't you come home to Arizona and work over here? And I said, well, for some reason, whatever it is, the universe blesses me more when I travel. I said, even though I'm spending more, I'm still bringing in more, and I can't explain it. You get what I'm saying? So when you're on the right path, and you're not trying to do things that are not meant for you, doors open, opportunities, blessings, financial opportunities, wealth will kind of gravitate towards you. And that's been my experience. I share that as a testimonial of my experience. I mean, of course, I don't have it all figured out, and I'm always willing to hear things and learn new things. But so far, that's been my story. And like, it's weird, because you would think, like, how much, like, people always ask me when I'm on Island Hopper TV, they're always like, how much do you spend to travel every month? Like, how much does it cost? Like, how much does it cost to do 52 things in Tokyo? How much does it cost to do 52 things in Singapore? How much will it cost if I do your itinerary? And I'm like, well, I don't really know. I don't really think of it like that. I budget and I have to run QuickBooks, and my accountant has to do all the information on that. But at the end of the year, I end up making more than I spent, and that's profit. So, if as long as there's profit, like if the profits stop coming, then I'd have to reconsider everything that I was doing. So, I mean, what do they say? Follow the money, I guess. But you gotta look at it like that. Just me says, if you don't know what you want to do, just think about what you want from life and what job would let you do it. Yeah, I mean, I guess you could say they always say like you are in the position you are in now because 10 years ago, that person 10 years ago was praying or asking for or doing a mantra or manifesting or putting thoughts into the atmosphere and the universe to get you to where you're at now. And if you really think back 10 years ago, like when someone said like that to me, I was like, wait, 10 years ago, was I trying to travel the world? And I thought to myself, I think I was. All right. So I'm like, oh man, I better put another 10-year plan in motion. So I'm like, that Think and Grow Rich book will tell you like, do not cap yourself. Like, don't put a cap on your limit. Don't limit yourself to your potential. Like, shoot for the stars, literally. Like, aim high. And so now I'm sitting there thinking like, man, I better get broaden my horizons here. Good morning, Elvis. How's it going? The housing market is awful. The prices are too high. You don't get anything for the money or house land or have share well with people you don't know. Yeah, I mean, Arizona's gotten overpriced. There's not much positive that I could say about buying a home in Arizona at the moment, but I could say that with inflation, it could still be undervalued. I mean, with projections of inflation over the next 10 years, it would probably be better to own a house and buy a house right now and wait for 10 years. And in 10 years, you'll probably be up on your investment. Even if you buy a house for 450, you'll probably end up looking at that house maybe being around 650 to 700. With the way that inflation has been just going crazy. I mean, we don't know exactly, but there is a such thing as like wages. We're at wage stagnation. I don't see wages being able to go up, and I don't see a way for people to get more money in their pocket. So I don't really see how a house could go up to 650 from 450 because so many people will be priced out. But maybe that's the end goal for the government is for you not to own a home, because in the 90s it was the American dream was to own a home, right? Affordable housing for everyone. So now they've kind of gone away from that, and it was you'll own nothing and still be happy. So we'll see. Elvis says, I've been looking at homes with AZ for the last 12 years. It's been terrible. Oh, dude, 12 years? You should have bought 12 years ago, man. In 2012, you'd be sitting on, dude, you could have bought a house in Tempe for like $189,000 and it would be worth like $450,000. I mean, I don't know if you wanted to say 12 years. Maybe you should have said 4 years, because then I could have agreed with that. But 12 years ago, the housing prices in Arizona were really nice, for sure. Every year, my wife and I set a goal for that year to do a plan and to do it. Every year it goes and it's done. Nice. Most people my age rent or have roommates. It's even crazy. Even my buddy making well over six figures, they're still renting or rooming up. Yeah, I mean, no matter how much you make, you should still be trying to be economical and thrifty in all areas of your life, not just blowing money. I had this funny situation happen the other day. I was shopping for sunglasses, and this dude comes up. I'm just sitting there shopping for sunglasses because I needed a pair of sunglasses. I was using those fake like Armani's or fake Jokelis that they sell for $5 in Jakarta, and I was like, oh man, those lenses are not good. So I was like, I'm gonna have to ante up and get a 100, 120, 180 or $200 pair of sunglasses. Some dude comes up And he must have thought that I thought that I was like a shopping guy, like I'm into shopping or flexing or materialism, which I'm not. Like I wear this shirt because it's nice, but the shirt cost me 25 bucks. It's a nice shirt for 25 bucks, custom fit. I got it at a tailor in Thailand, right? So I'm not one of those people that like flexes or is into showing off, right? Well, this guy comes up, he's got this big watch on his arm. Like, I guess there's this like watch culture, and he like comes up and he's like, oh, like trying to show off his watch because he thought like I might be in competition with him for shopping. And I was like, dude, I'm the wrong guy for that. I was just thinking that. I was like, is this guy really trying to flex a watch in my face to like make me like aware of how cool he is or something? And that was when I realized like some dudes will do that, like flex watches and stuff. But I don't know, man. I just found that to be so petty. But people are into that kind of stuff. But the point that I was making was being thrifty. So like I don't buy things unless I need it. I'll buy nice things, but I'm mostly buying it because it's of utility to me. It's if I buy a nice car like a Ford Raptor or something, I mean, sure, it looks cool and everything. I mean, Ford Raptor is a bit overkill, but have you ever driven a Ford Raptor in the desert? If you wanted to go off-roading in the desert, you'd rather be in a Ford Raptor or a Jeep Wrangler probably, but I'll take a Ford Raptor any day. Um, Ford Raptors, I mean, once you drive a Ford Raptor in the desert off-road, it's really hard to go back to anything less than that because you're going to be like, wow, man, I went from that to that, you know? You should have asked him if he needed help telling time. Yeah, I should have come up with some sort of pun. The thing that caught my attention was when the person told me the price. I think it came out to like $180 or something. And he goes, psh, like that. That was when I looked. I was like, did he just like blow air, or was he like hissing at the price as if like, oh, because he must have thought that I was one of those guys that is like, because I think here in Bali they get a lot of hipsters and like these people who are into that kind of culture of like showing off and stuff because they're young guys, I guess. I think these guys were from India, by the way. So I don't know like if that's a thing for India. And the reason I know it was from India because I know what the Indian language Hindi sounds like, and they were speaking Hindi. But either way, I was just like, no, dude, I'm not interested in your watch. Like, if anything, don't. I mean, if you want me to wear your watch, I'll wear it, but I'll probably take it off after like 10 minutes because I'll probably be like, it's too big. I don't really want to wear something like that. I don't care like how much it costs or anything like that. So, everyone just works near downtown Phoenix or Tempe, so they rent or just have roommates. And most of my friends make great money. Just impossible to find a decent home. Yeah, Tempe. I mean, you got to go out. If you're going to go in Tempe, I would go maybe towards like Ahwatukee, but that's probably not enough housing over there. You'd probably have to go South Chandler, and then you'd have to probably go out to Queen Creek to find anything worth. Tempe just does not have good homes. The houses in Tempe are overpriced and they're not very good. And then you live in these like little box apartment things along the Rio Salado, and you're like, no. Thanks to 130 people who crushed up the likes. We'll keep going. I mean, people are waking up in Arizona, so that's probably why it's good to keep going. But if you're just tuning on, smash up the likes. Let's see if we can get to 150. My plans for tomorrow. Right now it's 10:56. My plans for tomorrow is go down to Uluwatu, which is like a surf area here in Bali. I've been in Kuta, I've been in Seminyak, and I've been in Canggu. I did some really cool hanging out, like singing local music, drinking bintang, and drinking some like whatever they were giving me, some beers or like some like vodka and orange juice or something. And we were literally, they had a guitar and drums, and we were singing like all the song, like Jason Mars, Bruno Mars. And that was fun. But this area is quite built up or quite busy. There's a lot of Australians here. So I was thinking like go down to Uluwatu, chill out a little bit, get away from the hustle and bustle. So hopefully I go down to Uluwatu, go to some of those like temples and surf spots right there on the cliffs and relax a bit. but do be productive, but not in a big city environment like we have here in Kuta or Seminyak. So that's my plan. The U.S. middle class is wasting away in Bidenville, says Brian. Oh, okay. 10 toes down. That sounds like a good time. Yeah, it sounds like a good time. The music on the beach was really good. I needed that kind of human interactions, when you travel alone. And these people were cool. I mean, we did a barbecue. They do the surf school. Everyone's chilling. You can sing if you know the words, kind of stuff. They got the main singer. He's got the guitar. Here in Indonesia and Bali, they have a lot of good singers. Filipinos and Indonesians have good voices for singing. I don't, so I can't really do singing too much. But I'll sing like if I know the words to the song. A day in the life. I try to do those days in the life on Island Hopper TV travel highlights. Those are like, I actually have a channel that basically kind of highlights some of that stuff. That would be Island Hopper TV travel highlights. The main channel is Island Hopper TV, but the travel highlights is the behind the scenes stuff. I mean, I've put a few videos. Actually, I've got that Canggu videos coming up. I didn't record much of it because by that time I was already kind of like buzzing. Once the sun went down, I probably recorded about a minute or two of the party at the end. But if you see the video, Canggu, fast forward to maybe past 12 minutes or something, towards like the last 20% of the video, and you'll see when I caught up with those guys at the Tiki Bar. Rick W says, I was in Carefree back in early May, and I noticed they were constructing townhomes in the town center. They look nice, but 100K is a bit much. I'm surprised they're finally building up Carefree. I mean, they just built that, Hampton Inn or Hilton Garden. I don't know exactly what it is. I would have never thought Carefree would have had one of those chain hotels, although it needed one. I think the Boulders is now owned by Hilton. But yeah, Carefree building those townhouses around the town hall around the sundial. I hope it's able to preserve its history, because for a long time they weren't able to do that. What do you do for work besides YouTube, if you don't mind me asking? Longtime sub, both channels now. So YouTube does help out a lot, but I also have invested in cryptocurrency for many years, and that was something that paved the way for me. It was a decision that I made off the cuff that I didn't really believe in at the time, to be honest with you, that ended up paying off for me. I was just, ever since I got out of the military, I was kind of looking around for opportunities in technology that were going to come my way. And I had the same kind of focus, which was try not to don't ever get to a certain point in your life where you're so old or so jaded by life that you won't try to pay attention to the new stuff, which is me with TikTok, right? Like, I'm like, I don't got time for TikTok, but I play around with it. Like, living in Arizona now has like over 55,000 people on TikTok. We have like over maybe 30,000 on, maybe more on Instagram, but I haven't posted on either of those accounts for like 2 years. But I dabbled in it. I understood it, but I focus mostly on YouTube. But now I'm having to pay attention quite diligently to AI, because that's something that I need to really pay attention to. And I don't do nearly as much homework on that as I probably should. But staying up to the times on new technologies, new opportunities is probably my cue to the corner pocket. That's my key to success, is trying to stay close to ahead of the curve. I'm very seldom am I like early to the party, but I try to be early to the party. Some of you may know me from a cryptocurrency channel that I founded back in 2017 called Altcoin Buzz. That was my first real success as a YouTuber during the 2017 run up. Basically, what I was doing was I was taking really technical information from the blockchain and the cryptocurrency community and translating it to the average person And for about 3 months there, our cryptocurrency channel called Altcoin Buzz was the fastest growing YouTube channel during that bull run. And most of the reason was because I'm not like a nerd technical person, but I was able to, for some way, somehow understand the blockchain and how crypto and the economics and all of the necessary fundamentals of the economics, and translate that to the masses in a way that was easier for them to understand and make sense of. And because of that information that I was able to provide, that channel took off, and then that became a big thing. I wasn't able to continue owning it because I wasn't sure what the situation was with the regulations on Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. Obviously, you know, some of the people in the government are talking about very high of Bitcoin right now. I think Trump was saying that he's going to make Bitcoin and cryptocurrency a big part of the economy. I haven't really seen Biden or Harris say much about it. I don't think they're as positive as he is. So, I mean, that's going to play a factor in who's going to implement that into our economy. But I think BlackRock's big on it. So I'm just putting that out there because you got to be open-minded. That's what it is. Good AI stock is Planeteer. What is it? Jay Sully says, what branch in MOS? I was in the Navy, and we call it a rank, and it was an AO. When I got out, I was an AO2, Aviation Ordnance. Wickenburg will be in 70 years. I wouldn't want to live in Wickenburg if it became like Phoenix, because then it would be just like, Paradise Valley, or, it's going to be too much cars on the road. Too much cars on the road is no good. I'm looking for Arizona to build like a smart city, like where it's not so focused on automobiles. And no, I'm not an Agenda 21 or whatever that is kind of guy. I'm just a person who doesn't really like having to drive everywhere for every single thing I do. Number one is because I think it makes me fat, and I'm not trying to gain weight and get lazy and out of shape to where when I go to the doctor, he's going to say, you need to exercise more. So I like to do normal activities as my exercise instead of always having to go to the gym. So I like to walk around. Like, I'm like, okay, I got to go from point A to point B, and then I get my daily steps and all that, or I can ride a bike. But I don't like to just ride around in a place that's, number one, got too many cars whizzing by, or just riding around in a place that I'm going nowhere, but I'm riding the same path daily, and there's no real point to what I'm doing from point A to point B. I'm just going around the same path every single day. But if it's the same path and I'm going there with purpose, that's good exercise. But Americans these days, I mean, in Mesa, it's terrible. People, I think people, the extent of their exercise daily is they'll go from their apartment or their condo to the garage. So their exercise is going up and down the stairs in their garage, or just walking from the kitchen to the garage to their car. And then they get in their car, they go to Walgreens, they sit in the drive-thru, they pick up their statin drugs, they pick up their metformin or whatever they need, and then they go back home and they repeat. And all they're doing is just taking the pills. They're not getting any real exercise. And so that right there is part of the obesity epidemic that we have in the country. And I noticed it in myself because I was like so heavily dependent on cars. I wasn't getting in the necessary steps. I wasn't getting in necessary exercise. And as you get older, you get a little bit more lazy, you get a little bit more tired. You're not in as good physical shape, although you could be, but you're not getting in the steps. That's when I started to realize, I was like, I need to be in a place where I can have an active lifestyle as part of a habit. Elvis says, to the narrator of this channel, you need to do more research and go to other areas and interview the residents. What, in regards to what? Where did that comment come? Elvis Presley, where did that comment come from? What did you say before? What happened to the company that was going to set up in Mesa making microchips? They're not in. Are they in Mesa? I think they were in. They were off the 303 and I-17, and they were. That company's still there, and they just built the chip. That's Taiwan Semiconductors. Have you seen Neem traveling and how you get started? What is Neem? I don't know what Neem is. Yes, I've been to Philadelphia. I just recently made a video on Philadelphia. Actually, went to the Rocky Steps and Liberty Bell and Constitution and the Old Road and some of the like the Magic House or whatever. That's the place that's made of all these like junk recyclable items. You could be like Peter Santello. I could see it for sure. Yeah, I mean, oh yeah, that would be good. Yeah, I actually watch Peter Santello. I don't really use Snapchat, but he's like big on Snapchat. So like today I was on Snapchat and I like got into Peter Santello's string of storytelling, and he was in Pittsburgh talking to this old man who lived in Pittsburgh back when they had horrible air conditioning, horrible air pollution, and steel mills. And he was talking about how he was up there on Mount Washington, I think it is. And I just recently went to Pittsburgh, by the way, for the first time. And I went up there on the mountain where they have the funicular car that takes you up to the top from the river. They have the Three Rivers Stadium, or they have three rivers there. I think it's called the Mulligany or something like that. I can't even pronounce the river. But there's like two rivers that come together and they kind of turn into the Ohio River at some point. But you go up there and he said back when you would look down, it totally looks different. They built the new Pittsburgh Steelers Stadium. They built the new PNC Park. But that was cool to see Peter interviewing that guy. That was good. A lot of time, Arizona is too hot to do much outside for some people. Yeah, I mean, you see the same thing in Dubai. Like what Dubai has basically done is built essentially an indoor city, or what they've done in Singapore. Like I was just in Singapore recently, and I've explored Singapore many times, but I realized this time around they have a massive underground city. Like Montreal has a massive underground city, and it's famous, but that's because it gets cold there. But these very hot cities also should have underground, because if you go to the Singapore is extremely hot year round. It's right there on the equator, so they don't get like four seasons. They only have hot, literally hot year round. And so if you walk around at 2 o'clock in the afternoon in Singapore, you're going to be hot. Well, their way of doing it is a lot of their city is underground. And if you go into the underground cities, I mean, they have a lot of stuff. Yeah, Peter Santello is a great, he does great work. I mean, he's just an average guy, just like the rest of us. He's like really relatable, but he's taken that average guy approach instead of being like a mainstream. He's not like Anderson Cooper or any of these mainstream guys. He's just a average guy, goes out there and talks to average people, interviews them, and gets the real finger on the pulse of what's going on in the communities around the country. He used to travel abroad. Now he just goes around to towns in Utah, Alaska, all those cool places, right? Jay Sully says, how long have you been traveling and how do you get started? I would say I probably started in 2014. I was living in Hawaii. So when I got out of the Navy in 2012, I moved to San Diego for 2 years and I was going to college I was getting my bachelor's degree, finishing with the GI Bill. And I was trying to find out what I was going to do. So I started an online company and I did that and I sold it for a little bit of money and I had a little bit of chunk of change. So I said, I'm going to move to Hawaii. And then, I basically, even before that, I was living in San Diego, came across some hard times, was in a little bit of a funk. And I just booked a ticket from San Diego to Seattle on the Amtrak. And then when I got to Seattle, I explored Seattle for the first time for like 3 days. And then I was like, I'm going to book a flight from Seattle to Kona, Hawaii. And that kind of was like the first traveling by myself that I'd ever done back in 2014. And then when I was living in Hawaii, I decided to move to Hawaii like later that year. And when I got down there, I met this old man who was living in Thailand at the time, or came back to Hawaii. And he was telling me, he's like, I had a dog at the time. And he's like, I'll watch your house and you can go to Asia. Cause I had just gotten some money for selling my online business. And he goes, I'll watch your house and your dog. And I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. I thought about it for 2 days. I woke up that next day and I said, all right, I'm going to go from Hilo over to Kona. And then when I got to Kona, I flew to Maui, because at first I was just going to island hop across the Hawaiian Islands. So I did Big Island, Kona, and then I did Maui, all that stuff, Kihei and Lahaina. And then I flew to Oahu. And then when I got to Oahu, I woke up that morning and I was like, tickets to Manila. So I booked a flight from Honolulu to Manila. Sat right in the middle seat on one of those long hauls, and it went to Guam. And then when I got to Guam, we flew to Manila, and I arrived in Manila, and I was like, this is a horrible place. I was like, this place is no good. I was like, it was hot and it stunk. And I remember just being like, they need to clean this place up. Now I've learned, like, there's better places in Manila than where I was staying, but I was staying in like a $25 a night hotel in Manila. And I was like, I was in Manila, and I just remember it was really dirty. And I said to the local, I was like, where do I go in Philippines? Everyone told me to go to Philippines, and I'm here and I'm not liking it. And he's like, you go to Boracay. And I got on a plane and I went to Boracay. And I was like, all right, this place is kind of cool. And then when I was in Boracay, I was kind of like, but I'm over Philippines. So I flew to Bangkok. And then I spent some time in Bangkok. And then from there, I was just like, started hopping around. I went to Hong Kong, and then I went back to Phuket. And then I went to like Australia. And then I went to New Zealand. And then I was like, hey, I don't ever want to stop doing this because I really enjoy traveling. And that was it. That was how it happened. Have I been to Europe? Yes, I've been to Europe many times. 10 Toes Down says, I watched your videos from way back then, man. I feel like I'm in a similar situation. Funny, your 30s can be a wake-up call. Yeah, I didn't start traveling until I was around like 34, I would say. So if it's 2014 and I'm 40, no, it was like until I was like 31. I was like 31 or 32. Yeah. And after in 2014, I did the Asia trip for 3 months. And then in October, I did another trip because I was just bored. And I did a trip. I flew to Kauai for the first time. And then from Kauai, I flew to Costa Rica for the first time. And the first time I went to Costa Rica, I went to San Juan, and I went to San Jose, and I went to Jaco. And I didn't really like Costa Rica. I was like, who told me to go to Costa Rica? I'm like, this is not the cool place. Little did I know I would end up eventually really liking Costa Rica. But at the time, I didn't know much about Costa Rica. I was just like, nah, this is not it. And then I flew from Jaco or San Jose with a layover in Panama City to London. Yeah, to London. And then I like toured around Europe for like a month or two. And then I came back home, and I was like, hey, I kind of like this. I kind of like this life. So that was it. Those 2 trips in 2014. But then I ran out of money. I went to college for cybersecurity for like a year or something. I didn't really travel much. I just spent most of my time in Hawaii going around. And then when I went to Maui, I got back into travel because that cryptocurrency channel picked back up. So I flew to Tokyo for the first time. And then I flew around, and I lost my cell phone in Phuket. So I had to fly back home, cut it short. But then I ended up going back over there 2 months later. And then it just kind of just started to become a trend where I was always going. Nice, Jay Soley. Where you guys live? Where are you at, man? Have to go. Have a good day. See you, Rob. See you. Christy, prices are awful everywhere. Rent is out of sight up here, and everyone is staying put. Can't afford to borrow with higher interest rates, and I think it's everywhere. Yeah, and it's crazy because the only thing that's going to bring down interest rates are going to be when the economy starts to crash down. So if the economy starts to go downhill, then they're going to start lowering the interest rates to kind of even out the economy. And the only ones who are going to really be positioned for success with that are going to be the people who have cash on the sidelines, ready to, the people who've been kind of waiting for this opportunity to buy the dip, as you would say, buy the economic slowdown. So thanks to 152 people who crushed up the likes. Let's see if we can get it to 200 here real quick. What time is it where you guys are at? Right now it's 11:17. I've got a little bit of a headache from looking at the screen, but I can keep going. It's not too bad. Could just be the blue light. Christie's in Minnesota. Oh, Minnesota. That's a little bit different than Arizona. Anyways, I'm probably going to end this stream here. So I will see you guys on the next one. Thanks to everyone for watching and hitting the likes. And yeah, we'll tune in next time. This was a 2-hour live stream. So see you all. Thank you. See you later, 10 Toes Down.